Morning, everybody. This would be June 4th, and I'm going to be harvesting lots of things today, but right now I'm looking at lance leaf plantain, Plantago Lancelota. Right down here, there is a big patch of it here. It is most obvious by its rib structure. The other plantain, Plantago majoris or broadleaf plantain, has the same kind of structure, but it's just shaped a little differently. This is sometimes known as English plantain. The back of the leaf has the ribs going all the way down to where it connects to all the other leaves. Has no side ribs like you see in other kinds of plants. That was the underside. And you can see that same structure on the top. They kind of come out of the ground in a circular fashion, kind of like a whorl. They are starting to throw their seeds. So this is, or make their flowers, and then they will throw their seeds. This is the flower. It isn't fully out yet. There probably are more here that are a little further along. The whole plant is useful. I'll be talking a little bit about what I'm going to do with it, but I wanted you to see the plant right now in the ground. I'll also get an image of the broadleaf plantain because I have another patch of that in another location. And here is a lance leaf plantain that is actually got more flowers on it. And we'll see if we can get that to focus a little bit. It's about as good as it's going to get for this. But that's the whole plant going to flower. This is the broadleaf plantain. This one has been stepped on a lot. It's often growing where people are stepping. It doesn't really mind. It bangs it up a bit, but it makes a pretty strong ground cover. We have it as part of our weedy lawn. The ribs, as in the lance leaf, go all the way down to where the stem comes out of the ground. They all merge. Kind of cool. And the top side, you can see those main ribs all the way down from the top. This is the broadleaf plantain, Plantago majoris, and they have identical uses. This one will have a slightly different looking flower a little later on in the season. Here's a better looking version of the broadleaf plantain. You can also see the purple coloring in the stems. That's another identifying characteristic. This is a pretty good example of plantain in flower. This is the Plantago Lancelota, the lance leaf plantain. The flowers are interesting, kind of nondescript. I don't think I'm going to be able to focus on this with my phone, but it's enough to give you an idea. That's not too bad. And then there's the lance leaf coming up from a base. They all come up from the ground. There's no side branching or anything like that. And as I indicated before, the vein structure is what you see on all the plantains. It's the leaves that are used primarily, although the seeds of plantain, I'm not sure which variety, are used as a laxative, source of psyllium. I've not done that. I haven't used those. So it's a beautiful morning here in Connecticut and very dry. I'm going to start gathering some plantain. It's late morning. The dew is gone for most of the plants. I've been taught to gather in the morning after the dew is off the plants. Ideally, plants that you're harvesting are best harvested before they go to flower because their energy is not yet into the reproductive part of the cycle. This plantain has some flowers. I'm going to gather some of it, but I'm finding lots that don't have flowers. But this one has some flowers. There's some plantain flowers for you. Not particularly showy, but interesting nonetheless, and lots of little pollinators seem to love them. Plantain was brought over by the early settlers in this country. It was an important plant, has been for many hundreds of years. And while it spreads itself, it's certainly not invasive, and it is very welcome in my yard. And when we're done with our particular season of gathering it, it just becomes part of our mowed lawn, and it just reappears every single year. Very happy. Here I have gathered a bowl of fresh plantain leaves. This is Plantago Lancelota. I think I mentioned before, but I'll say it again, that this plantain and the Plantago majoris, or the broadleaf plantain, are interchangeable in terms of their constituents. I just happened this year to have a ton of this, which is great. And I just harvested them, and my plan for this particular batch is to dry these in my dehydrator. I have an Excalibur dehydrator. I don't have any kind of arrangement with that company. I just happen to have that, and I like it. It's very efficient. I like it because it has a timer and a thermostat, so I can control the temperature, because herbs really should not be dried over 95 or 100 degrees. And I can set the actual temperature on this dehydrator. I have a little vase of the flowers here. So I'm going to get drying, and I will share what this looks like once I've got all these on the drying rack. So I'm going to get multiple trays of plantain to go into my dehydrator here. I don't think I mentioned before, but I'll mention it now, that I do not wash herbs that are obviously clean, that are above the ground, that aren't covered in any type of rain splash. I don't want to wash away any of the goodness on the plants. I'm either going to be using these dried plants to make an oil at a later point, or a tincture. Now, I might wash plants that I'm going to consume for lunch. Like I do wash lettuce and kale and those things if I'm going to consume them right away. But if I'm going to store them or freeze them or do other things, I might not always wash them first. It kind of depends on what I'm doing with them. In this case, these were nice and clean, and I'm not washing them because I'm putting them right in the dehydrator, and I didn't want to add any extra moisture. There's 3 trays in the Excalibur dehydrator right now. I am going to start this up while I gather more. I'm hoping to fill it up so I get a big bang for my buck in terms of the electricity. So the Excalibur controls are up here, and recommendations for different temperatures for drying different items, but the timer is on the right, and I'm going to dry these at 95 degrees, and I'm going to start with 10 hours, and I will take a look once or twice to see how they're doing. You can always add more time later. And down the bottom I have some marigolds that I'm also dehydrating. I'm going to gather some more flowers. I like dried flowers for dried flower potpourris, wreaths, and other types of decorations that I make up in the fall. So I start really cutting the flowers off the plants now. When you deadhead, in this case I'm not deadheading, I'm capturing them when they're looking their best. But if you remove flowers, the plant will make more flowers and more branches on many things, including marigolds and straw flowers. I've been cutting straw flowers for the same purpose and drying them. But there's the Excalibur. There are plenty of other dehydrators out there on the market, and many of them probably, I would guess, have similar features like thermostat and timer. Some don't, but you can still do a great job drying things with a simple dehydrator. Something that you want to check out, and if you can afford to purchase one that has the extra features, it certainly will give you a better product in the long run, or at least make your mind at ease as you're dehydrating items. When we're done with the dehydration process, I've decided that I am going to make an oil extraction with this plantain so that I have the oil to use in either salves or directly for skin issues. The oil can be turned into salves or creams at a later point, blended with other herbs or just by itself. Plantain is a major soother and healer of skin. Here's one more comparison of the 2 varieties of plantain that I happen to have, that most of us have. This is the broadleaf plantain, and this is the lance leaf, narrow leaf. So they're quite different looking, but they are identical in their uses. And I just wanted to share that when the plant is in a fertile place, like right in your fertile garden, which I would encourage, the leaves and the plant itself get huge. Like any plant, You could turn this otherwise weed into a lovely cultivated plant with giant leaves just by giving it a little extra to eat. You always want to remember that when you're harvesting wild plants that you're not working in an area where someone might have sprayed herbicides or used other chemicals. A backyard that is full of these kind of plants that you just let grow and thrive will be one that you're going to find useful. But for additional references to how to use plantain that I consider to be extremely reliable include Rosemary Gladstar's Family Herbal. In the description, there'll be information on this book. Rosemary was my original teacher. She taught hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of us. And anything that comes out of her writing, her teachings, is something that you can count on, something that has a tremendous amount of experience and historical background. This is my favorite book. It's a completely reliable book for using basic herbs, and basically is full of formulas and descriptions of the plants and ways to combine things, and you can't go wrong with this particular book. I also had another teacher over the years, David Hoffman, and his New Holistic Herbal also has very good information about plantain. And so both of these will be in the description.